Hi, this is Moden Day Mullatos, episode 2, Reverse Racism. And we're in partnership with FYA. This episode is all about reverse racism and basically the whole Little Britain and white chick situation. And we're just gonna explain why you can't really compare those shows. I'm Jaya. Jaya had a dream. I rap, sing, and produce, and I also am a storyteller with FYA.
I'm Tia. I've just finished my undergraduate degree doing politics and international relations, and yeah, right now I'm just chilling, not got much going on, trying to figure out my life. And
my name is JJ. I also go by the name May J. I am currently unemployed musician, producer, singer, rapper, all around vibey guy. And yeah, man, we just hit the talk. That's it, really.
Hi, I'm Kofi. I go by Dr. Skull on Instagram. I'm a singer, a rapper, and a representative for Colour Wales Knife Crime Prevention Programme.
So firstly, we just want to, for anyone who doesn't know about the Little Britain and white chicks scenario.
I mean, like I said, it's the case of you got two different types of comedy and two different reasons for racial stereotyping. So on one side, you've got the Wayans brother with the movie White Chicks, where there are two black policemen and them dressing up as white women is part of the advancement of the story.
They go undercover as two
exactly, and that's part of the
girls.
Yeah,
they go undercover as part of the thing. Whereas when you look at Little Britain and Come Fly With Me, which are two shows that I love, you know, I never had an issue with them, especially at a younger age when you weren't really putting two and two together. But in those shows, they have a lot of racial stereotypes just for the sake of, look how funny this race is, you know?
The show is based off of racial stereotypes. Every single character
really
has a...
For white people as well, you know? Vicky Pollard, there you go.
That's the chav stereotype of white working class women, yeah.
It's literally like an extreme sort of self-awareness. It's like self-deprecation almost of a white man's take on races. Like it's
and
sort
genders.
of and genders, yeah. It sort of explains, especially in the case of the blackface, it explains like the white man's idea of what a black man is like, but it sort of takes the mick out of that in a way.
And Little Britain and that has always been like, oh, but we all kind of know someone like that. Like that's kind of been the thing, like, oh, it's awful, isn't it? But we all kind of know someone like that, and it's not like I don't know anyone like Precious.
Who was it? I don't know if you remember. I think that the character was Bubbles. You know, she used to wear
Bubbles, the fake tan.
Darling, and all of that shit.
The fake tan sort of.
And then there was another one, and so, I don't know if it was a different season or a different episode. Then David Williams came in as like a black version.
This was on Little Britain, by the way. I don't know if we said.
Weird, man. You know what I'm saying? Why did he have to be a black woman?
There's always been a fantasy and of sort of, ooh, look at these like mystical people that we can like be or like look into or watch for entertainment. But and also that whole thing with like you said, like I just want to really emphasize the point that in White Chicks it is very clear throughout that these are two men, because the whole joke is, look, like they're trying so hard, but how are these girls not realizing that these guys are literally right in front of them? That's the whole joke. Whereas like
but
you
it's
said,
quite clearly two
and it's and if anything it's kind of it's a good film. Like it's
a good movie.
I think it's actually quite a good film to kind of show like two complete different types of people,
two completely different backgrounds,
kind of like in the same place, and it's just funny. Like I don't know, I think those type of films break the awkwardness of difference. Whereas like
the thing is, people are getting offended over it, but like they're saying, oh, it should be taken down because it's whiteface, but there's no history behind whiteface. Whereas, which we'll get into in a bit, there's a massive history behind blackface and how it was used to sort of degrade black people. Whereas whiteface isn't a thing, like it doesn't
because white
exist.
people in all these countries have been in the position of power.
Yeah. Exactly. So now we'll go into the definition of reverse racism. So I've just got a little piece to say. So assumptions and stereotypes about white people are examples of racial prejudice, not racism. Racial prejudice refers to a set of discriminatory or derogatory attitudes based on assumptions deriving from perceptions about race and or skin color. Thus, racial prejudice can indeed be directed at white people, like, oh, white people can't dance, but is not considered racism because it does not have systematic relationship of power. Because when backed with power, racial prejudice becomes racism because it's acts of discrimination and oppression against groups of individuals. So therefore, reverse racism is a myth because it tries to ignore the fundamental question of who holds power and privilege and different individuals and groups involved.
I think that reverse racism implies that wait, let me say that again. Reverse racism implies that white people are like the only people that can be racist, because they're saying that the opposite of us of them being racist is us being racist back to them, which is sort of not the case. Like anyone can be racist. Black people can be racist to other races, but the thing is they can't be racist to white people because there's always been that superiority there. There's always been like who was it that said it? There's a comedian called Wanda Sykes. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she said the only time people aren't questioned about their race is when they're white. So there's always been that superiority there, which obviously plays into white privilege as well. And for them to say that we're being racist back to them, it's not a thing because we haven't. There's no history behind it to back it up. Makes sense.
They don't have the same markers of difference that we have. We're obviously focusing on Western society, but even if you look at the whole world, white people still have overall power, in my opinion. So I'd still suggest that reverse racism in the whole world is still a myth, because even if in South Africa there is, because people always bring up South Africa.
Yeah, they're talking about that a lot, about the burning of white farmers and all of this stuff, which again is is condemnable. Most definitely, murder is murder, regardless of color. However, I don't know, man.
Is it racism?
I'm not in South Africa. So
it's not based on their race.
It's racial inequalities. I don't know.
It's a retaliation.
Yeah.
So I was doing a bit of research on this, and when you Google reverse racism, the first thing that pops up is affirmative action. And if anyone that doesn't know what affirmative action is, it's a set of like policies and like different sorts of rules that are put in place in society in order to level the playing field for different minority groups. For example, having quotas in a workplace. So if we look at India, they have this thing called the reservation system, and their society is caste based. So they have I think it's 40% of positions of high power positions that are reserved for minority groups. And in the UK, that's actually illegal. It's illegal for people to only hire people based off of their. If you have a white person and a black person, it's illegal to hire the black person if they're not at equal merit. But if they are, then you're allowed to hire the
black
minority.
Over the white person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's just a way of leveling the playing field. I read this really interesting thing about equity, justice and all this kind of thing. I think we can probably edit it in, but it's a picture of two people trying to grab apples from an apple tree. Affirmative action isn't a way of saying, oh yeah, let's just give all these minority groups everything they need. It's a way of giving people equal opportunity. It's not about just giving away free stuff. It's about leveling the playing field when it comes to opportunity and access to resources and stuff that people that are put in these low positions of power because of history don't have the access to or the equal opportunity to. And to say that's racist to me as a white person because I'm better suited to this job than them, but you're going to hire them just because no, that is not what affirmative action is.
Though, the fact that you just said though that is the first thing that comes up when you search reverse racism. It's almost like someone somewhere is trying to instill the idea that is reverse racism. I don't understand why that came up. That's worrying that was the first thing that came up.
I see a lot of people on social media recently talking about, very, very graphically describing, talking about, oh, well, if these black people want to actually get, the same level of us, they should get off their arses and start working and all this and all that. And it's like, bro, if you're not seeing, people been working. But it goes back to what Tia just said about the opportunities from young. everything goes back to that. And when you're not given an equal playing field, the results aren't going to be equal. So of course there's going to be a group of people that's kind of like, well, yo, what's going on, man?
Yeah, and when it comes to this affirmative action thing, it is such a pro and a con, because as much as I'm all for it, even me getting to this university that's a Russell group,
It's like, was I only given this
yeah,
option
exactly. I
because I'm
consider
my
so
minority?
much. Or was I only allowed because I'm free school meals, BME, like whatever. And then also when, like, for us to be at uni, yeah, I wonder if anyone looks at us and thinks that.
And thinks, oh, they're only there.
Yeah, and we don't always speak like, oh, hello, like we do. I don't know. And also the sort of culture that we're very intact with our Black culture, I feel like, especially with the music stuff. And I just think I wouldn't be surprised if someone considered that. That's one thing that's kind of sad about it. It's almost a tokenism thing.
Oh yeah, big time.
So I saw this analogy about Monopoly, and it was just to put into perspective this whole level playing field thing. It was like, imagine if me as a player got to play 400 rounds of Monopoly before you were even allowed to go, like, start. And then imagine for the next 50 rounds, every time you earned something, I either just got rid of it or said, no, that's mine, I owe that. Then after 450 rounds of Monopoly, there is no way you would be able to catch up to what I've made in these past 450 rounds of Monopoly. And that's what affirmative action works to do. It works to get people on a level playing field, so where from there they can work. And then yes, it can be based on meritocracy. But until there is this equal opportunity, then personally, I don't care if all these minority groups get given these like advantages and just these opportunities to, like, for social mobility. Like, it's not I don't see how it's an issue personally.
But I'm realizing that I think a lot of the issue is, and this is the whole ideology, is that everything is trying to so it's like white, this whole reverse racism thing is, and positive discrimination is literally white working class people against Black working class people, because like they're thinking in their head, oh, you lot are getting this and we're not. But everyone needs to be turning around, instead of pointing fingers at each other, pointing fingers at the government, because like we need to stop blaming each other for these things, because we all suffer, yes, but you lot don't suffer because of your color of skin. And like, so like as much as we understand that there's a lot of struggle for people that has nothing to do with race just adds that extra layer of pressure,
because
so
when these two people,
it's the seasoning on top.
Yeah, you can mask your class a lot easier than
you can.
Exactly. Because then you can draw the example of when actual minorities who aren't working class, who have managed to get lucky and actually go into that hierarchy, I guess you could call it, they're still getting questioned by police. I saw something a couple of days ago about a Black guy who was in a nice car, clearly, and he was in a very white town, I'm assuming it was. I don't know where it was, somewhere here in England. And the cop pulled him over and literally said, well, I pulled you over today. You're a Black man, and we have a lot of drug dealers around here recently. So boom, straight away, his direct instinct was, Black man, nice car, he sells drugs.
I'm not racist though. I'm not racist.
I'm not racist. I'm not racist. You're just obviously a Black man.
The thing is, yeah. So I think now we're going to go into the history of blackface and just the history of Black representation in Western society. So obviously during colonialism, the Western imagination depicted West Africans as uncivilized, wildly sexual, and all of that just because of their proximity with animals. And then that led on to justifying their exploitation, and that led on to the way that they're represented, because as Black people became even more powerless, obviously when media and stuff became a thing, the only depictions of Black people were from the white person's imagination. So there was distinctions between the mind and body. So civilized white people are known to be knowledgeable, they're cultured, they're human, but Black people were known to be all to do with their body and lust and nature and animals, basically. So Black bodies just across history have been eroticized and fetishized. one example is just black females as the Jezebel. I think we kind of went into that before, but it's just about them having a shapely body used for sexuality to make babies for free labor on the plantations and everything. And yeah, they're basically used for their reproductive technology and pleasure. And yeah, so that kind of led into, so basically all that stuff that happened in the past during the Enlightenment and leading into slavery led into this phenomena called blackface that Tia's going to describe now.
Yeah, okay, so I was doing some research about blackface, particularly in America, and the way these white actors would paint their face would be using stuff like shoe polish, grease paint, burnt cork, and the color of their skin was like the same color as my phone. Then they would enlarge their lips, like exaggerate all these features on their faces, and the way these people were portrayed were as lazy, hypersexual, as Jaya said. Like, so I want to particularly talk about this film called The Birth of a Nation, and this was based on a novel called The Klansman, and basically it was about the story of these two families in America, one in North and one in South, and it was basically portrayed this black man as a rapist who was here to, like, as a criminal. All he was gonna, like, all the black man would do in America is rape all these white women. And this came from a point in time where frees had just been, no, sorry. This came from a point in time in America where slaves had just been freed. So, and a lot of people weren't happy about that. All these freed slaves were demanding their civil rights. And as you can tell, these people that had owned slaves still didn't want these black people roaming free in their country. So when they were given rights, these black men were still considered three quarters of a citizen, I think, when slaves were freed.
What was it, 3/5 of a man?
Yeah, and they still didn't want any rights for these people. So the way they did this was through, we're going to go into the policing in another episode, but it was to take away their rights through criminalization. And they basically used blackface, and this film in particular, it had a private screening in the White House when Woodrow Wilson was president, and it was used as propaganda to just absolutely, like, dename the black man and just continue this rhetoric of this man is worthless, he shouldn't have rights, he is a criminal, our country is better off without these people, or when we have power over these people, because they're animalistic, lazy, and most importantly, dangerous. So that is what blackface was used for. And that is why today, when we see it on our TV screens, it's not just about, oh, he's just he's just dressing up as a white woman. No, this comes from a horrible place in history.
Yeah, very disgusting bloodshed.
Yeah, exactly, which was used to just diminish people and, quite frankly, murder them and throw them into jail.
At the end of the day, America and even Britain, but America especially, realized that, okay, I've freed these slaves, but crap, where's half my money coming from now?
Exactly.
Because I need some money, like, and also these black people are strong now. They've been working. They're angry, fam. They're angry. They're strong and angry, and they knew that. They knew they had to. It's all about the ideology. They had to just change it, but not break.
And again, they just put it under another,
which still happens
another name
today.
And then by the time they come out,
carries on today.
They probably are a criminal, because all their contacts are criminals, and it's just the money. Yeah, as you said,
vicious cycle.
But guys,
it's the vicious cycle of incarceration.
A lot of these actors were from white, working class, and often Irish actors who, in a way, they did this to like authenticate their whiteness, to show, even though I'm looked down on society by people higher up on the social ladder, by other white people, I don't want to be looked at that way, so I'm going to authenticate my whiteness by putting down people that aren't white. So let's change the dialogue.
And it's exactly the same as now you see black celebrities, Oprah, sacrificing their blackness to try and break. It's exactly the same, because the Irish people, and like you said, they had their own troubles with America. So as soon as they were slightly more accepted, they were like, all right, I'll do this to fit in. That's how they get you, folks. That's how they get you.
And if
it's part of their coonery at the end of the day. Even, it's just for the Irish people who also were, just completely put down and hated by just American whites, British whites. Well, American whites are British whites, you know. But
that's why it's so important for all these people who are oppressed or have been oppressed by like Western society to come together. But
yeah, that's what I mean. Minorities have to stick up for other minorities
Mm-hmm.
and create
if
their
you
own
don't
majority.
if you don't want to read a book, if you don't want to take all that time to study, I feel you. Go on YouTube.
Yeah.
Use the internet. It's all your
Documentaries also.
friends, you know?
To build on Tia's point, they use blackface quite often to desensitize other white people, especially on TV and stuff like that. To now they feel like it's okay. They can go and watch
Yeah,
these
it was just humor.
lynchings and
It was
human
just
zoos.
television.
Same in the Nazi. I mean, during Nazi era and everything, when they used to show German people, oh look, the Jews are having fun in the.
Of course, it makes them look like they're subhuman and subpar, and now we're just now we can just go and watch lynchings and go to human zoos and everything will be okay.
It's like you go back to like the 60s, especially in this country, with the television show, the minstrel show, which was a whole comedy show about white people dressing up as black people. And like you just said, Kofi, it's the desensitization, because it's like, oh well, this is just lighthearted. It's
okay, yeah.
I mean,
So I was just gonna quickly mention that Jim Crow was a blackface character.
There you go.
And his legacy lived on to create Jim Crow laws,
Mm.
which were laws that were put in place to segregate America.
And that's Du Bois, a big critical race theorist, who like, yeah, is literally like probably the biggest one. He was literally saying that in the 20th century, the biggest like marker or whatever of difference is the color line. But I still think in the 21st century, this color line still persists, because as he made the perfect point, yeah, okay, maybe certain things have changed, like rules, but if people's heads haven't changed, if you've instilled this whole thing throughout media, throughout hundreds and hundreds of years, like how can you expect, just by changing a policy, you can't expect.
It's like when you talk about the current pulling down and defacing of statues around the world.
And the policy was called Jim Crow, like you said.
Literally. But like people are getting mad and being like, oh, but this is history. We should learn from history. First of all, we should not have to look at statues of oppressors, of people that traded slaves. I mean, it's like white people are very quick to come up and say, well, you know, the Arabs were also, you know, trading slaves. And yes, they were. But you don't go anywhere in the Middle East and find statues of those people.
Exactly.
Even Africans were trading slaves at one point, which is a point lots of
you know what?
Slaves in.
But the thing is, we don't deny that. The problem is we don't deny that, but we want the whole story to be told.
Tell the whole story though.
Tell the whole story.
We've only been told the blurb. We haven't read. No one's allowed us to read the book to them.
Not even the chapters. No one's even allowed us to like.
Literally. We damn to know the name of the actual book.
The truth in this chat today, I mean in this podcast today, is whoo, everyone's coming with niceness though, for real.
We got that
like,
tea.
Honestly.
Black face fuels white supremacy. And it has done, and if it continues, it still will.
Again, please don't blame us or any black people that this stuff has happened. Blame your government, blame colonialists, and blame the education system for not teaching you this stuff.
And even closer to home, just blame those people you call influencers, those celebrities you look up to.
That reproduce this.
Yeah.
Those people in your family who, you know, will make the odd racist joke because he thinks that's what's gonna pop everyone. Everyone's gonna go off.
Yeah,
it's gonna get
shock value.
Yeah, there we go.
Shock value jokes. Yeah, you need to pull them up, man, because they're living in a different era.
These images like carry on today, and they not only inform wider society and what it means to be black, but also helps black people construct their own identities. So regardless of some progress in education and employment for black people, we still struggle to be represented in the media and powerful institutions because of the direct connection between the preservation of white supremacy and the institutionalization of specific representations of blackness in mass media that maintains oppression, exploitation, and domination. These are just notes from uni essays that I've wrote, but you guys should read into Bell Hooks and Hill Collins about representation of Black bodies and everything, because it's really interesting. But yeah, so Western society has just continued to exploit people. There's like cultural appropriation, racial fetishization, blackface. They all kind of come into the same. Yep, there you go. They all come into the same thing of just overall misrepresentation of Black people. And obviously, ethnic signifiers become the main thing of social mobility. So like literally what you look like and obviously your ethnicity literally determines like almost everything.
The whole life.
So much research.
I think one of the biggest problems at hand, mostly here in the UK, is nationalism, because people, when like we were talking about the whole story and telling the whole story. It seems like when you bring up any sort of negative trait towards the British Empire, there's one person straight was like, "Oh, well, listen, Mike, listen, what's going on about, bro? Get over it. We're done. Everything's fine now. There's no such thing as racism." But it's the urge to not accept that, you know. Like I said, I made a point last week on Facebook, which is kind of comedic, but it's true. The Black community had to accept the fact that Robert R. Kelly is a pedophile.
Exactly.
And R. Kelly is instilled in Black culture across the world. You can be a Black Australian, in Africa itself, across the entire continent, African American, African British. R. Kelly is going to be at any wedding, barbecue, celebration of any sort. And ever since all of that stuff came out about him, everything was wiped. Even I, as someone whose whole life is based around music, and for a while was a big R. Kelly fan, I can wholeheartedly sit here and say R. Kelly is a bad person, and I would never, ever associate myself with him or his music at any point.
Yeah.
Actually, but it's the fact that we accepted that. But when we talk about Boris Johnson, I mean, he's a racist.
Churchill. When we talk about Churchill,
we talk about Winston Churchill.
Oh, but he was a war hero.
He was a British war hero. He definitely wasn't an Indian war hero.
And if he was so good, so good,
or a Kenyan war hero,
the first chance that the British public had, they voted him out. If you loved him so much,
they didn't. I watched the whole Churchill thing. They were begging him to leave near the end because he was really like not in a good headspace.
Well, so he served. Then there was another prime minister. Then he came back.
Yeah, because they didn't. Yeah,
because he was such a good British war hero.
And they're like, oh god, he's a bit old now. Any good?
I'll be honest, right?
I can say that
we wouldn't have won the war if it wasn't for the Americans. As much as that pains me to say, we would not have won the war if it wasn't for the Americans. And also, what we can say at the beginning is
really emphasize that this. I just want to say one more thing. As we're all mixed race, I think it's important for us to acknowledge and to point out that this is because we're of lighter skin. We're like basically the darker your skin is, the worse this will affect you, basically. And even as in the whole colorism representation and getting jobs and stuff. Now we're going to go into why deleting the show, although it is a step forward, is kind of almost diluting the issue. For me, deleting the show will have a number of consequences. Firstly, we never asked for the show to be deleted, so then when they do that, they're completely diluting our message and potentially misconstruing the movement and therefore making it less effective, because it is about media. It really is about media. But I do not need loads of white celebrities. And my friend pointed this out and I put it on my story. So all these celebrities that were doing these apology videos, if you look in their eyes, they have these white rings in their eyes. If you really you have to set up your whole room. They probably practiced it like 12 times.
They've got like cue cards in front of them.
It's so insincere, and it's also like, oh, sorry, like, is that like, are you happy now? Are you happy? Like, look what you've done. You've ruined, like.
It's like, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, deleting the show, but then we've had no Boris, really, like, no proper speech from Boris, no, like, anything. Just deleting the show is completely dismissing our issue. And I think I think right now is a really easy time for them to dismiss things with Corona and everything. And it's just, yeah, I want to hear from the education system. I want someone to say, put Boris in I
want some teachers to speak out.
Like, part of me wanted to get loads of people to tweet Boris, but then at the same time, I want him to be put on the spot. Like, do you think Britain's racist? Because any money he'll say no, and then that's a quick way to get him out. Yeah, and it's annoying as well. If you really cared about Little Britain and you really cared about Come Fly With Me, why didn't you buy the DVD?
Trust me.
It's in
Yes,
CEX
sir.
for 50p. I've seen that hanging in CEX. Multiple copies for like years. None of you brought it, so don't pretend you love these things.
Yeah, hey, shoot, I was waiting for a season 2 of Comply.
We are complain culture. Like, we just love
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah, cancel culture is a big thing, but complain culture is the kind of mother of that.
But see,
Yeah.
the thing is, the apparently the reason why it got taken down was due to 2 complaints that it had, which were written on in the Sun newspaper and the Daily Mail. You tell me what black person you know that reads the Daily Mail.
Or the Sun.
Or the Sun, especially the Sun.
The Sun, man.
Tactical to dismiss
White people don't even read the Sun.
Exactly.
It's not even sunny in this country.
That just shows who has the power. There has been millions of people protesting. Daily Mail and Thingy write 2 articles and the shows are gone. Are you crazy?
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
So it's like I said to my dad on FaceTime this morning. There is nobody around the world right now marching down the streets of big cities talking about get rid of Little Britain. We've had enough. No one's saying that.
And yet we're like, Boris out. And it's like,
Yeah. Oh, you mean get rid of Little Britain? Yeah, okay, surely. No problem.
yeah.
Nobody asked, bro. We're literally just asking for equality.
So bad.
All it does is, now I am not too politically savvy. I'm not really savvy at all.
That word.
But I read something this morning from a caller, and he said it's basically just a liberal move to just stir up more divide, because the people who are, you know, all lives matter per se, that to them, again, like I mentioned earlier, is attacking their culture.
Yep.
So it's like, whoa.
They keep us distracted, as we said. This is how they keep us distracted, crossing us, making us hate each other, looking at each other, whilst they're all watching us eating pop.
It's stupid. It's just division. And certain people don't see it. You know? They just straight away go, boom, this is because of Black Lives Matter people. Instead of being like, well, to be fair, if you look at what they're asking for and what they're marching for, at no point have they said, and yes, the state of television is terrible.
We can't have these things because of the history and because of the power.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I don't know if we'll ever be able to have these things because of that. But we definitely can head to a direction of more openness if we head to a direction of more retribution. Yeah.
This is Netflix's way of just saying, oh, if we get rid of this, then we're in the clear.
It's a big business move.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about the repercussions of. This is going off the back of what JJ was saying. It's a way for white people to become the victim. And as JJ was saying, oh, you're taking away our culture. But if that's your culture is then based off degrading minorities.
Exactly.
Like, people don't want to accept that their culture has flaws.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think, well, like you said, no one asked for it to be taken down.
No one was marching for that.
So by taking this down, it's like, oh, well, white chicks is racist towards white people, so why don't you take that? Why don't you get rid of that film? Like, it's like,
I agree. I think people are way too focused on what is and isn't racist rather than racism as an issue. I just think that instead of trying to figure out what is and isn't racist, maybe try and not be racist instead.
At the end of the day, if you're questioning whether it's racist, I feel like the rule of thumb is if you're questioning whether it's racist or not, it probably is, or probably is encouraging racism.
Just avoid it.
If you have to ask yourself if you're racist.
Yeah.
Newsflash, buddy.
We got websites for you to learn from.
Well, the fact that we're even making this episode shows you that.
Added more oil to the pan.
We have been
Exactly.
literally. You've just pointed out this episode has encapsulated the fact that we've had to stop and speak about this before we can carry on. Because taken over this week. That's so right. I think it's really disrespectful of institutions to do this, and we cannot forget this for real, because it's a joke. It's horrible that there are people dying on the streets. There have been people dying for, like, in our culture for history and for like years or whatever, but like recently there's literally people fighting for their life on the streets in America and like even here, and they're gonna do that. That's it. Nationalism and patriotism, although it can be a really nice and good thing, can also be a thing that feels like crime. And yeah, and like what we're trying to say is deleting this show has led to a lot of people who are like, oh, Great Britain, to be like, oh, you can't, oh, our country's full of snowflakes now. Back in the war days, we used to do this and that. We fought so much to have freedom of speech and freedom of choice. And I mean, yeah, a lot of people have fought, but a lot of Black people have fought, firstly, and we don't even have graves when we fought for these things. But even then, like either way, just because your ancestors fought for a war does not mean that they can just be racist. Like it doesn't secure your
doesn't justify your ignorance.
Yeah, when identities are threatened in dominant countries like the UK, they come back with full force, like EDL,
straight away,
back with full force with their massive British flags to really tell us like this is their country.
Yeah, it's almost like I said before, about the attacking of a culture rather than a constructive criticism. You know, when people are saying, okay, look at England, look at the UK as a whole, look at its history, and take the good and celebrate the good. But understand that the bad that's there also needs to be accepted. And you can like, you know, as their favorite thing to say is, that's the past. You can't do anything about it. You know, but you can work.
But the past still lives today, so you can do something about it.
Have bled through into today.
It's literally a blueprint of what not to do or what to do in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a way of working towards a better future.
Yeah,
it's the best way to say it.
I mean, man, it's like, because look at the kind of generalization of just celebrated British moments. So the celebration of winning the war, you know, isn't really a Black thing in England. You know what I'm saying? You don't get like on D-Day or VE Day, whatever it is.
Don't get me started about VE Day this year.
VE Day. You don't get like a bunch of Black people like, hey, pull up, let's celebrate the team. No one's talking about that. You know, but then,
I feel like this year as well, it was just an excuse for people to just have a party. We were in a pandemic as well. Like you don't care about this day either.
Exactly. But there can be unity. I mean, shoot, look, I think it's 2016. 2016, the World Cup. Man, England was going off at that point. Everyone was getting along.
I know the solidarity during World Cup. I mean, of course, domestic violence increased ridiculously during the World Cup.
Oh, and right now, actually, with coronavirus,
it's gone up massively in Corona. And also,
with the coronavirus, I've heard.
But also, there was riots, which not many people talk about, where 2 people died. But we won't speak about them. There was riots in Paris where two people were killed.
And also,
media. I never heard about that.
Really bad, the whole monkey chanting thing as well.
Oh yeah.
My dad was saying something about that when he used to go to demonstrations and protests back in the day. He was saying he would walk through town and there would be like National Front members and BNP and stuff like that lining the streets, just there making monkey noises. And bear in mind, you know, they were only there to cause a fight. That's all they were there for. They just wanted to start drama.
I mean, we're here protesting to fight for our literal humanity and rights, and then there's people fighting to fight because they're annoyed that we want. Right? I think a lot of it genuinely is internet. Like, internet is an amazing place, but it's also just
toxic.
It's so toxic. Like, because it's just so dangerous. I feel like it's just so dangerous.
It's even in like the sports world. In boxing, Anthony Joshua made a speech the other day at one of the protests, which, by the way, people have taken out of context. He was reading a letter. He was reading a letter from someone else, so they weren't even his words. Then, literally, not even 2 days, a day later, is it Tyson Fury?
Tyson Fury.
Oh,
yeah. He put up a post of a picture of the statue of Winston Churchill, or a photo of Winston Churchill, saying about how amazing of a war hero he is and stuff like that. But people are he's literally using it to further his career, so to speak, because they're meant to be having a boxing match. They've been set up to have a boxing match.
So now he's trying to cause a divide because he knows that the white
world more of a divide. Precisely.
It's the aspect of especially in Britain, of the pick and choose, you know, because just a couple of months ago, when Joshua won his last fight, it was all might, proud of Britain.
Everyone loves
Exactly.
That is Britain at its finest. But the second he speaks out about the flaws within British society, it's
no one wants to know. Exactly.
no one wants to hear it. So make your mind up, man.
And
If he's going to be the front of Britain, if he's going to be Britain's best boxer,
keep that same energy.
Yeah.
Keep that same energy.
Shout out Shay Lingo.
Keep that same energy. But I've just got a good point as well that this was on someone's story because I thought it was such a good point. In 2017, when the Manchester Arena was bombed, lots of people changed their profile pic to the worker bee and said Manchester strong. Nobody said all cities strong. When the shootings at I can't read that, in Paris in 2015, people said I stand with Paris. Nobody said, well, what about the people who were shot in my city? Have you ever seen anyone counter a breast cancer post with, what about my colon cancer? So why is it with black people? And as we've said, as we continuously say, people really need to unembed their deeply rooted ideas about black people because this is clearly a black thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's look at the common denominator in all of those situations. Exactly. It's just that people were dying. So why is it any different?
Yeah.
Why?
Because when we actually mention the fact that it's black lives that are being killed, you're just using
but that's reverse racism. Because what about me? I just want to talk about how it can be dangerous. Because even in this country, in high schools and primary schools, children are told they are not allowed to speak their mother tongue.
Yeah. And that causes radical,
And it's down to the T, it's whitewashing of the whole nation. It's like, yes, it is good to have unity, but there's correct ways of going about it.
This is the whole assimilation versus multiculturalism. Like, multiculturalism is a good
once again though, that goes back to education in the education system.
I went to a private British school in Spain, and I remember there was this particular year that there was just a huge influx of Russian students, which is cool because we were already like a multicultural school, but a lot of these Russian kids didn't really have a strong level of English. So when it came to like, break time in the playground or lunchtime, whatever, they'd kind of come together and they'd be speaking Russian and stuff. And teachers would like continuously walk by and be like, no, now, speak English.
Yeah,
I get it. I get it. They're trying to learn English, but let them do their thing.
Yeah.
It's like, once they get on the bus at the end of the day,
they did that in the UK as well, fam.
Yeah, well, he went to a British school. Obviously, it wasn't.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
yeah.
And a lot of this is they're literally telling, and more time they'll be doing this because it'll help you. But why don't you break the system instead of conforming to it? Like, plaster on a thing. We got to try and actually heal the wound. Like, I don't want to just put plasters on things and patch.
And it's it's like,
hey, we're running out of plasters.
Yeah,
we are running out of plasters.
We're running out of plasters that don't match our skin color.
Running out of plasters that don't match our skin color. In the education system, I think even if white people were taught about white enslavement as well in the UK, then they wouldn't be as patriotic as they are. If people understood their own history, not just our history, they need to understand their own history.
Exactly, because that's like I said a minute ago. They always like to bring up about, oh, well, you weren't the only ones that were slaves. What about the Jews? There were white people that were slaves too. Okay, but if you was educated,
but in the next breath, they're talking about how great Britain is.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. They contradict themselves so much.
Exactly.
Pick and choose.
Yeah.
Pick and choose, like I said.
And that's the luxury of white privilege.
Yeah. This is the problem. The biggest problem with white privilege is definitely the pick and mix. Some hyper nationalism is almost like a hybrid of imperialism, like a new version of imperialists, because some imperialists would go over and they would justify that in the Bible it literally said, oh look, we need to like go over and govern these animals, like and like our culture and civilization. Yeah, and like, so I think that's to do with nationalism because it's now its new shape of control. This is the new form of control.
I refuse to believe there's any one person on this planet that knows the original scriptures that the Bible tells.
No, definitely not. It all got shaped depending on what was happening at the time. Yeah.
Because the representation in those shows only represents stereotypes, and it just deepens the stereotypes that people have of other people. So it's important to have real representation. in the media, not just Precious and Taj getting about in the airport. It's important to have real, like, because like we said, I don't know anyone, because I know a lot of Black people and Asian people. I don't know any Tajes or any Preciouses.
And I think
and it helps keep the dialogue of, oh yeah, but you're a loud Black woman, you're this, like, it's we don't need it in life.
And it goes back.
It goes back to the Mammy and Uncle Tom and all of that as well. That's our representation now. That's just how people see us.
Yeah, at the end of the day, whether people say that people don't take media and stuff literally, they do, because I mean, how do they not? For instance, with the memes and stuff. So there was the meme about the Air Forces being creased, yeah? And then no one wanted to have creased Air Forces. So it does set expectations and norms. So whether people think they do take these things literally or not, I really do think that people do. People are informed about things way more through the media than they are through like education and stuff.
Especially when that's the only representation they have.
Exactly. If you have no Black teachers and like no Black people in your community and that, then and
Black
that's why.
Because I have a friend from Norfolk, and she said her first Black teacher was in year 9, and before uni she had no Black friends. And like, that is, people live in these rural white villages, and until they, like, if they don't go to uni and they stay in this village, have children in this village, have grandchildren in this village, they're not going to see anyone else. All they're going to see is what they see on TV
and
the media.
It's almost like,
almost
like white people not accepting that again is real. Like, for example, I used to have a driver, a 70-year-old white man, cool guy. But one time I was doing a gig, he was driving me there, down in Wales. I want to say, shit, what the fuck was it called? Yeah, some coastal town in Wales. And it was the first time that we'd been there, and we were driving through this small little village. I mean, tiny, one road in, one road out. And my driver said, he was, I don't even know if we're heading the right way. You might have to get out and knock on the door and ask for directions. And I was like, well, look, man, I said, I'm too bound to be around. And I was like, you can ask. I was like, I'm not. And he was like, oh, of course not. They'll be fine with that. I was like, let me tell you something. I can tell you now that there is not one minority in this village. And if
not of North Wales,
looking like I look, dressed like I'm looking, looking like I'm looking, dressed like I'm dressed, if I just knock on some random Doris's door, Jesus.
And this is the whole thing about us having
the fear in her.
Yeah, 100%. Say that louder.
And that again goes down to what they've been taught about Black people.
And our whole life, and then we have to play the game, like literally the whole. Even as a girl, like for instance, it's just to help people relate who don't understand like Black experience.
If you're
type
a woman.
thing. Yeah, like if you're, for instance, any even white, Black, whatever girls, more time when it gets to a certain point in night, you feel like, okay, if I go outside and I'm walking, I probably have to call someone, because if anything happens to me, like whether it's right or wrong, I'm gonna get blamed for going out on my own. Because I shouldn't have done that, I should have known better type thing. Yeah,
I've never had a Black teacher.
I had one Black Black head teacher right at the end of primary school, and it was exactly around the Obama stage, which I found very weird, very, very weird coincidence that they got a Black head teacher right when Obama was elected. But anyway, and then like in secondary school, I'm trying to think now, I cannot think of one Black teacher we had. I genuinely can't. I actually can't. I'm trying to think. And we had like quite a lot of ethnic minority like students, at least like 2/5. So
the only Black teacher I've had is my dad. And he had a teacher, man.
I had a Black teacher in year 11, and he was only there from about, I've literally had a flashback to when I was like 6 years old. So I started school in England, right? And I went to a primary school in a very white town. And in assemblies, they used to sing all these different songs. And there was this one song, which was an African chant.
Oh my God.
And it was called JJ Kool-Aid. And I remember getting so upset because I was getting so bullied about that. My mom went in and literally had to ask them to stop singing the song. And I still remember the song to this day. JJ Kool-Aid, JJ Coffee, Manga, Kaka Shalanga. That is embedded in my head from 6 years old because it horrified me that much. And I got so much,
very similar story.
so much like issues because of it.
That's
and I didn't even, at 6 years old, I didn't even realize how deep it was. But the white children, not all of them, of course, but certain white children already knew to make that connection, you know?
I don't even know what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. When I had an African person come into school in primary school, that's the thing. When an African or anything to do with African culture comes into school, it's always the most like rawest form of like African, like, so like this guy came in like full like dashiki, everything, like, and I can't even remember, but
she's definitely what the schools have asked for.
But it was horrible because I remember the song, and the song was literally about farming, and I don't know, I feel a bit sticky because I remember at the time it was like the dance was like we had to go like this and put the seeds down, so we'd be going like this, and then he'd be like, and the whole dance was about labor, like about doing labor. So and also he was like, Africa, hey, Zuma Lapa, Africa, hey.
Mad.
That was the song. So like, I just think that just feeds into stereotypes, like you said.
That says a lot about British schooling, doesn't it?
That does say a lot.
Ever really represent any sort of African representation. It's just.
Or yeah, but like, it's again from the ignorance when these institutions think they're trying to create a better diversity. It's like, oh well, we'll get a Jamaican person to come in, we'll get someone from India to come in, and just have a quick lesson about their culture.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, not even like it's not even like, oh, they're like, oh, we'll just do this and then it's done. It's more, even if they are coming from a good place, it's just the fact that they're ignorant to the fact that this is not necessarily what their culture is. And two, the thing that Jay has said about planting the seeds, how is that progressive? Like, how is that?
People know that day?
And what have you taught your students by getting them to dance a dance about African labor?
Honestly, that is honestly the only thing I can think of in any sort of education that was anything to do with Africa. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We're gonna put like resources and stuff in the bio. Please subscribe to this channel and the FYA's channel.
We'll leave that in the description as well.
We work FYA with empowering youth and ethnic minorities and giving them opportunities. Right now there's a lot of online courses as well as stuff in Nottingham, so I really think if you want to get involved somehow, there's volunteering stuff and loads of other stuff. So just check that out. We'll have a Moden Day Mullatos. There's a Moden Day Mullatos Instagram that will be available once this video is out. And we'll have all of our acts and everything in that. And we'll probably introduce ourselves each on that at some point as well. So just let us know what you want us to carry on doing. And stay safe, wash your hands. Stay strong, carry on debunking these white supremacists. I know it's very hard. If you ever want to speak about this stuff, us four, I'm sure, are like willing to.
Yeah, man, we're always
definitely 100%.
in any way to educate and help, man. Because at the end of the day, we want love.
We might even.
We want love and unity, man. Just all on the same level.
Yeah, and if there's
pop off, JJ.
The thing is that this can be really powerful. If there's continued interest, like we can really elevate this. We could start doing events of this, like so. But we need you guys' support, and we need to know whether you guys are interested in this because, like, this has the potential to really like elevate some discussions. And we're in a local school, fam. We don't like although these topics are sensitive. We want it to be open. For people to say things.
Discussion,
yeah. Let your voice be heard.
Also, we're still learning as well. So if people are out there that want to educate us, then please feel free. We're not saying that we know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for having us. Bless up, stay safe.
Big love, man.
It's about big love to
also, everyone, turn on the notification bell because it'll tell you every time we upload.
Like and subscribe.
Leave a like, rate below. Okay, bye everyone. Peace.